Vasudev Jaya Hari Das.
Hare Krishna, Romapada Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
How are you?
Eager to speak about Lord Chaitanya's associates. I'm wound up. I'm enthusiastic.
Beautiful. So, you're a pretty famous devotee. We don't have to give you much introduction, but I think that one thing about you that maybe many people don't know, some people know, you're very, very active in college preaching. And, this you have been doing for a very long time, and you have a wide circuit, if you will, that you developed. How did the COVID affect that effort?
Run silent, run deep. Everything kind of went into the submarine mode. And there are some occasional, like yesterday and the week before and so forth, events with collections of colleges. And, that's the way it's been going. It's sporadic and not so consistent. There are still things coming up this semester, but it's kind of quiet on the COVID front.
So let's hope that things settle down with this COVID so that you can return to that.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. As you know, but then some of our audience that may be visiting us for the first time, the GBC SPT has been conducting this celebrating Sri Caitanya caritāmṛta. And we have had about half of our speakers, leaders throughout the movement, such as yourself. We have done about 35 interviews so far. And we are now double trucking it between now and Gaur Purnima, where we're doing 2 and 3 a day.
Wow.
It's absolutely wonderful. I hope the audience and your holy self doesn't mind me saying I've got the best job in the world, because what I've been doing is just interviewing devotees that I deeply look up to and take instruction from, and all I'm doing is helping them speak. And so it's a great service. You chose, as we started to talk about topics, that you wanted to speak about these a few of the very powerful and primary personalities of Caitanya caritāmṛta, and what their roles are in Krishna Lila and like that. So we're very, very anxious to hear from you. We usually go for about 40 minutes or so you might want to 45 minutes, so kind of keep track of the time, because of course we can get lost in these personalities. But you're going to start with Rupa Goswami, and of course we are Rupanugas. So we're very anxious to hear. Tell us about Rupa Goswami.
The topic from the menu was the nature, the characteristics, and the contributions of these associates. You got to start with Rupa Goswami. And something that I've appreciated since spending time with visiting Mayapur and visiting Puri and conducting yatras is 2 things that each of the associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibit in a astounding and profound degree: humility and enthusiasm, which is almost like stop and go. Humility, exemplified by Rupa Goswami in many ways, but one really delightful manner of Rupa Goswami's humility is when he was called upon to recite from his Vidagdha Madhava Lalita Madhava. Lord Chaitanya called all of his associates the next day And Rupa Goswami refused, well, politely. He was feeling so humble, he was not qualified to even sit in their assembly. Lord Caitanya called him. He didn't move because he was so controlled by his humility that he sat at a distance. He's being honored by all the senior Vaishnavas, and his heart is so humble, he can't sit in their assembly. That's one. And there's, of course, many. And at the same time, his unbridled eagerness, we know that this is one of the essential qualifications, according to Rupa Goswami, to go further in the bhakti process. And one of the outstanding examples of his eagerness was in terms of service, writing and establishing the places of Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. One of the pastimes I love of Rupa Goswami was finding Govindaji, because he knew that there were deities installed by the great grandson of Krishna, Vajranabh. The one he could not find was Govindaji. So the story goes, he was beside himself. He went to the maps. He went to the brahmanas. He went he went inside. He went outside and couldn't find Govindaji. He's by the side of the river Jamuna in great distress because he's failed to fulfill the instruction of Mahaprabhu to find Govindaji. Guess what? Krishna came and told him where he is. Of course, in the Leela, he didn't say, "Oh, Krishna, thank you for answering my prayer." But a little boy saw him looking so sad and, "What's wrong? I'm looking for Govindaji. I can't find him. I know where he is." And he took him to the exact spot where there was a cow that would come every evening around milking time and deposit milk on a mound. She would abhishek for Govindaji. So he understood. His spiritual acumen told him, this is it. And so, because he's Rupa Goswami, he just asked some helpers, and the helpers dug, and sure enough, there was Govindaji buried under the earth. And he made Govindaji his main deity, and so forth and so on. But his unbridled enthusiasm to carry out the service given to him, and he passed that on through disciplic succession unto us through our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada. And I'd like to glorify Prabhupada doing the same thing, but I'll keep on Rupa Goswami's. And the followers of Rupa Goswami have his qualities because they come from him as followers of Rupa Goswami. He, in addition to being incredibly, profoundly humble and profoundly enthusiastic, he was very cultured. As we don't know in the West, one of his cultured points was, although he was identified by Caitanya Mahaprabhu as the recipient of his full mercy, he looked up to his elder brother like guru. Whenever he wrote things, he would have Sanatana Goswami review it to verify, was he on track? He has this connection with Krishna, but he's looking to his elder brother in that way. And he showed great respect for so many Vaishnavas. Something that I've learned recently is, along with the story that we're all well aware of, that Rupa Goswami requested Vallabhacharya to proofread and edit his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He had the greatest regard for Vallabhacharya. And when Jiva Goswami took some exception to his Vallabhacharya's editing of Rupa Goswami's writing, Vallabhacharya said, "Your disciple, who is this? He's very brilliant, and I agree with what he said." And Rupa Goswami admonished Jiva Goswami for speaking anything to his superior. Now, something I learned just recently, like within the past week, is in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, there is reference not by naming Vallabhacharya, but by naming the sadhana bhakti and raganuga bhakti terminology of Vallabha. When Rupa Goswami is explaining these in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, without referring to his name, he refers to the nomenclature of Vallabha, saying other teachers teach the same principle with under this term and that term. You know, Pushti Marg is the meaning. It's right there in Jiva Goswami's commentary. Pushti Marg is the same as Raganuga Bhakti, according to Rupa Goswami. He had the utmost respect for others that are not even in his sampradaya. He's not, not a partial man. Or another example of this is in Padyavali. Padyavali is such a beautiful, esoteric collection of not just his writings, but writings of many, many personalities, some of whom they're unknown, and some of whom are known. And he's honoring, like Jiva Goswami did, which I'm sure he learned from Rupa Goswami, that you take nectar from any place. And he was very happy to honor and respect other Vaishnavas. Now, in contrast, our more, less mature, immature, neophyte physician in bhakti, we're very faithful to our sampradaya. And we honor and love our sampradaya acharyas. And we look at our sampradaya acharyas, and they're very, very respectful to other acharyas. Wherever there is truth, they're very respectful. They honor it. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami doesn't speak of any other disciplic succession because he's giving Lord Chaitanya's teachings on bhakti. And he's mentioning Vallabhacharya, not by name, but by teaching. Really nice. He had profound attachment to the holy name, naturally, because that's the Yuga Dharma. And through the medium of that profound attachment to the holy name, he had realizations of Krishna Leela that are, how would you say? They're astounding. They're out of this world. Vidagdha Madhava and Lalita Madhava. And, those are very, very elevated writings. But if the little bit that I've read, not like some of our God brothers who, like Chevron Maharaj, is immersed in such Leela, but it's so profound. And how did he get these realizations? He has a direct Krishna channel, and he's establishing teachings because he's Rupa Goswami and Rupa Nugas. He's establishing teachings that are not found in the Vedas. And we accept them as verifiable as the Vedas themselves. And this is part of Lord Chaitanya's teachings, the fifth Veda. In many cases, Vrindavan Das Thakur, because we've been appreciating Lord Chaitanya's appearance in Chaitanya Bhagavat, he often says and writes, there are understandings of Lord Chaitanya that are not found within the Vedas. Now, who has access to those? Those that have unalloyed faith and devotion to the personality of Godhead truths are revealed to them that are not even within the Vedas. And we accept them as absolute truth. Truth about Krishna Tattva. And one other meditation about Rupa Goswami, not only he had and he gave, he thoroughly trained his nephew, Jiva Goswami, to be the next Acharya. Because as we know, following a great personality, a generation or two later, that charismatic or leading personality things start to dissipate and fade, but he protected the disciplic line from Lord Caitanya by thoroughly instructing the most qualified recipient to carry on the tradition, namely Jiva Goswami. He personally gave him his deity. It says he personally carved his deity. He wasn't a Murtiwala, but he personally carved the deity of Jiva Goswami. He gave him the residence in the Radha Damodar temple. That's in the Seva Kunja area of Vrindavan. He trained him thoroughly in all the teachings of all the Goswamis and set him on his way to be the next Acharya. So he's naturally so. In Krishna Lila, he is the most intimate associate of Srimati Radharani in Krishna Lila. In Krishna Lila, the most intimate associate of Radharani, Lalita, your beloved Lalita. I'm letting the cat out of the bag, but Gopal.
No, don't. I'm not qualified to even.
Well, he has great affection for and appreciation and high regard for Lalita, and the dearmost associate of Lita amongst her Manjaris is Sri Rupa Manjari. And of course, the succeeding acharyas, Narottam Das Thakur and others, have enormous affection for Sri Rupa Manjari. That's Rupa Goswami in Krishna Lila. So you can't get higher than that. The servant of the servant of the servant.
So, Maharaj, being a fallen person, just struggling to someday hope to become a devotee, I grabbed a couple of these quality characteristics and want to ask you a question. We have enthusiasm, and we have another topic, the chanting of Sri Nam. So, in combining enthusiasm with our chanting of japa, tell us about that.
I'm going to share with the audience that, inspired by Gopal Bhatta, that every year I give a festival of the holy name, and exactly this topic was the theme of this 2021 Festival of the Holy Name. Say yes to the holy name. That yes means yearning, E is enthusiasm, and S is spontaneous. So yearning is one thing, and then putting that yearning into the fast lane, or to a more mature stage of yearning, is investing enthusiasm. And Rupa Goswami introduced bhakti through sadhana. So we want to restore our connection with Krishna, and yearning for that connection to be restored. Then it has to move to the next stage, and that's enthusiasm. Rupa Goswami taught us how to, and he showed by example an enthusiasm that was astounding. And through that enthusiasm, the doorway to spontaneous love for Krishna becomes opened. He taught it in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He showed it by his personal example. We just follow in the footsteps and hold on to his dhoti and move towards the more mature stages of bhakti. And it's natural, but it takes descending mercy. We want, as our great acharyas pray, for even Raghunath Das prays for the dust of the lotus feet of Rupa Goswami, birth after birth. That's humility, and it's also enthusiasm from one who has humility and enthusiasm for the holy name and the process of bhakti.
I like this yes principle. Sounds very good. I think I'm going to use it one day. Let us turn our attention to Jiva Goswami.
Yeah. I'll share something. Jiva Goswami is one of my heroes. Jiva Goswami is one of my heroes because one of the first literatures, the very first literature that I read in Krishna consciousness was an article in a Back to Godhead magazine given to me by Burjan when we were in college together. And it was an article by Bhaktisiddhanta. And when I read Bhaktisiddhanta's writing, I didn't understand it, but I felt my consciousness was lifted to another place. And I've had the highest regard for Bhaktisiddhanta since then. And Jiva Goswami's writing is like that. It's not just that it's scholarly. It's certainly scholarly. But it has a potency that lifts consciousness to another place. And a very, very systematic, comprehensive, detailed, spiritually powerful, lift you to another realm of consciousness kind of communication method. So I have utmost regard. He's a hero for me, Jiva Goswami. And some of his characteristics, because that's the, in his qualities, from his childhood, we know him as a scholar, but from his childhood, besides scholarship, he had very profound attachment for deity worship. He had Krishna Balaram deities, and his biography says he was inseparable from them. Little boys play. And he was all the time dressing his deity, praying to his deity, offering things to his deity. He would go to sleep with his deity. His parents would try to separate him from his deities. He wouldn't be separated from them. Later, there's many things to say, but time is flying. So when he received his deity of Damodar from Rupa Goswami, biographers say that Krishna would play his flute and Jiva Goswami would dance. And they would have a reciprocation with one another in a way that's, like his writing. It's from another realm. And he had profound, deep appreciation for deity worship. In addition, something that's really noteworthy, something like our founder Acharya, he had a vision for the future in property protection. In the Jiva Institute, which has literatures written in his hand, Jiva Goswami established the deed of ownership, because during the time of Jiva Goswami, there wasn't always safe with Muslim rule. So he established an agreement in writing twice with Aurangzeb that the deity and the property would be protected henceforward. It was a legal document. And he established a will. Vaishnavas didn't do such things, but he did. So that the intellectual property of the Goswamis would be preserved. And he had vision. He not only had, his head was in the clouds and he didn't do anything practical. He did so many practical things. He established scribes that would make copies of the Goswami literature and kept a library. Detailed library. He was so expert in deity worship that when previous acharyas and even subsequent acharyas left this world, the deities went on the altar of the Radha Damodar temple because of his expertise in deity worship and property protection. He was an amazing acharya, and very loyal to Rupa Goswami. If person said something against Rupa Goswami, he didn't leave the place. He took the other option of correcting the person, because you can't correct Rupa Goswami. Bhaktisiddhanta did something very similar in relation to his father, which I won't go into, but very strong in protection of property, writings, deities, and as well the future. Jiva Goswami, like Rupa Goswami, not only preserved the disciplic succession, but he made sure that the disciplic succession would go on by his very careful training of the three great personalities, Narottam, Srinivasacharya, and Narottam Das Thakur, to continue the line of disciplic succession. And so many things. Last but not least, the traveling Sankirtan party, celebrated in ISKCON, of course, is the traveling Sankirtan parties that did so much and are still doing so much for making the literature of our disciplic succession available to the world. Jiva Goswami established the first, as we know, traveling Sankirtan party from the reserve of written literature of the Goswamis, which he knew thoroughly, preserved, taught to his followers, and sent them out to teach others. This is the Sankirtan movement of Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, we don't hear so much about the congregational chanting, something very similar to Bhaktisiddhanta, who spoke certainly, because it's the Yuga Dharma, the Sankirtan movement of Caitanya Mahaprabhu. We know him more for his katha, Krishna katha, and his teaching and his example setting. But the Sankirtan movement of Caitanya Mahaprabhu was largely, of course, the acharyas that he trained became celebrated singers of the message of Lord Chaitanya in their native language. They spread Krishna consciousness very effectively through Sankirtan, congregational chanting, but also through book distribution. And how sacred was that book distribution? He knew, as his uncle, Rupa Goswami, established, and Sanatana Goswami established through writings, and 400,000 Sanskrit verses in one lifetime. So let me just do this. 400,000 Sanskrit verses means in the Bhagavatam, there's 18,000 verses. In Mahabharata, there's 100,000 verses. So it's like he wrote 3 Mahabharats, something like 7 or 8 Srimad Bhagavatams, and a whole bunch of other books in one lifetime, along with all this other training, educating, extending care, guiding Raghunath Das Goswami when it came to the excavation of Radhakund. It was Raghunath Das's service, but Jiva Goswami was right behind him, making sure that everything was done so expertly. So expertly.
If you assume 50 years, this 400,000 verses means on average 22 verses a day being composed.
And just to add to that, many of you in our listening audience, you know who Radhika Raman is. He did his PhD thesis on 3 of those 400,000 verses. A PhD thesis. No, he
just on 3.
From one of the Sandarbhas. So one day, I'd like to deeply study the Sandarbhas. I'm not ready for that. I'm trying to keep my head above water with all the important things I'm trying to do for Krishna. But
you did read the Tattva Sandarbha.
I not only read it, I taught it. The whole Tattva Sandarbha took about 60 hours to teach, what to speak of study it and prepare for it.
Wow.
But
is all that recorded?
Yes. One of the main resources, of course, was Gopi Pranadana Prabhu, because course in Tattva Sandarbha before his book was published. And then when his book was published, it's rich, because he's Gopi Pranadana Prabhu was an exceptional personality. He was so loyal to Prabhupada. He read so many things, but he didn't, no wavering from Prabhupada. He's an incredible person. So I have all trust and confidence in his translation and the commentary that he put together, largely based on Baladev Vijayabhusan's commentary. So we have a great treasure, And we're very
But
fortunate.
this 60-unit portrayal of Tattva Sandarbha must be amazing. How did you put all that together? What did you do to do that?
I spent lots of time, and that's why I say he's one of my heroes. Jiva Goswami is so deep and so profound. And, you know, to get access to Jiva Goswami's depth and profound writings, Gopi was, you know, an entryway. Because he spent more time than I did, you know, writing the Tattva Sandarbha. I spent 60 hours speaking about it, and probably 3 times that in preparing. But when you immerse yourself in the writings of such a personality, you feel close to that personality. Not only, you know, the teachings, but you feel close to the personality. So I'm carrying that in my heart as I'm speaking about.
No. I have some glimmer of that. My read of the Tattva Sandarbha went like this. I felt, and this goes back to what you were saying earlier about Jiva Goswami's nature and characteristic. I felt my faith in the Bhagavatam being lifted page by page. Page by page. So, and maybe some of our audience doesn't know the Tattva Sandarbha, hasn't taken the time to read it. I don't think the BBT has printed a ton of those books, but we should encourage our audience to read that book. It's tremendous, and basically the Tattva Sandarbha is telling the truth of the Bhagavatam in one sense. Yes,
There's 2 parts to Tattva Sandarbha. There's the Pramana Kanda section. And that's like, as far as I'm concerned, our devotees that want their faith in the Bhagavatam to be ramped up a whole bunch, read Tattva Sandarbha, because if there's any trace of uncertainty, not like necessarily a doubt, but are we really on the right track? That's gone. And it's very systematic, step by step. It's not written for faithless persons. It is written for intellectuals, because the language is high and the thought process is, he moves quickly. But the authority, the pramana, the means of knowing the subject matter, Krishna, is best through Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's a slam dunk. It's when you're done that first part, the pramana kanda, okay, Srimad Bhagavatam. And then he starts tackling in the second half something that helped me from my visits in China. Is he deals with differing views about fundamental teachings within the Bhagavatam, like, for example, the existence of the soul. He deals with Buddhism that was still prevalent at the time. There's a term, Kshanik Buddhism. That Kshanik Vada says all there is the moment. It's modern. Be in the moment. So, are you enjoying being in the moment, Maharaj or Swamiji or Sadhu or something like that? It's a Buddhist phrase that says the only reality is the moment, because the past moment is gone, the future moment isn't here yet. All there is the moment. All there is the moment. So be in the moment, and be in the moment, so that you can go beyond the moment into what? Void, nirvana, enlightenment. So he tackles it, he brings it up, and twice. The philosophical foundation why that should not be the view that you live by or accept. And he gives the alternative. It's like, wow. Now, supposing somebody isn't so inclined and they just want to be in the moment, that's okay. But if you want to be in the Bhagavatam moment, grab a hold of Jiva Goswami's hand, let him take you for a walk, and you'll find the Bhagavatam's understanding of being with Krishna is what you'll meet just by his association. And many other such jewels in the second half of the Bhagavatam. And in other words, I'm saying it's dealing with things that we contact in our day-to-day spiritual lives in the world today without knowing like what's the context of this idea. Mindfulness. It's the same notion. Mindfulness. In the moment. Be in the moment. You know, when we were in our college days, it was be here now. Same idea. Remember that?
Right, of course. Yeah.
Of course. It's the same idea. It's an impersonal voidist idea. So it sounds cool, but what is it? Where does it take you? And what's the alternative? So the first part is the Bhagavatam is the means of knowing Krishna. And the other part, second half, is you go other paths. You're not going to reach Krishna. You're going to reach the wall. And it's profound. It's pull your socks up and wow.
We may do maybe sometime in April, Maharaj, another interview simply on this topic and portray, and you can tell us about this 60 section review of the Tattva Sandarbha, because it's such an important book. Let us move to Ramananda Roy and Swarup Damodar. Tell us about them.
This is very joyful. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about these personalities. I'm feeling,
Yeah, so am I. I'm feeling energized.
I hope my voice doesn't get too overwhelming because
No.
I'm feeling, wow, this is I'm having a great time. So, as we know, one of your speakers was Madhavananda, who made a very nice presentation on the divisions of Lord Chaitanya's life. The 24, 6, 6, and 12, something like that. 6 of travel, 6 of dealing with the devotees. And the last 12 years of Lord Chaitanya's life was going into profound, unparalleled, literally unparalleled states of Mahabhav, exhibiting to the world what is not seen in the world. It's not worldly. It's the moods of Radha in her intense feelings of separation from Krishna, and his constant companions during that period of time, constant companions for 12 years, were Swarup Damodar and Ramananda Roy. Swarup Damodar, our acharyas describe him with Lord Chaitanya's alter ego. Now that's a modern phrase. What does alter ego mean? Probably different people have different ideas what that means. But he's like, a reflection, or as what's inside Lord Chaitanya, it's outside in the form of Swarup Damodar. And highly learned, he knew exactly the feelings of Lord Chaitanya. He knew exactly which verses to say that would amplify and nourish and heighten those ecstatic emotions. Who can understand what platform Swarup Damodar was on? And then Ramananda Roy, we know from Caitanya caritāmṛta, he was appreciated by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya as the most learned personality. And Lord Chaitanya was eager to see him, and they met. Of course, they're eternal associates, but they met. And in really simple terms, this is Radharani getting together with Lalita and Vishaka in Gaura Leela, and having a beyond an otherworldly experience together. And those, as Lalita and Vishaka would nourish Radharani's emotions, Swarup Damodar Ramananda Roy would nourish Lord Chaitanya's emotions, and they would understand his emotions, and they would help him and assist him in deepening those experiences of those emotions. No, I'm using the word emotion again and again because it's an ecstasy. So prema, beyond bhava, in the stages of prema. And they were very, very expert in relishing with Lord Chaitanya the love of Radha for Krishna. What can you say? Now, it's interesting because there are different descriptions of who is Ramananda Roy in Krishna Lila. Now, there are two main explanations and some other ones. He's Arjuna, and then the Gauraguna Deshdipika says there's two Arjunas. One is the Pandava Arjuna, and the other is one of Krishna's intimate associates in Vrindavan, a cowherd boy named Arjuna. And he writes that Ramananda Roy was a combination of both Arjunas. So, the technology isn't explained. How is he multiple personalities in one personality? But not only that, but he was Lalita in Krishna Lila. Now, Lalita Saki in Krishna Lila combined with Arjuna, the cowherd boy, and Arjuna, the Pandava. And he concludes, Gauraguna Deshdipika concludes, learned persons say he was a combination of all three. Now, how does, I don't have any realization, but how can, other than bhava, certainly there's three souls inside one body, and there's sometimes a combination of a blend of this soul, that soul. But the bhava of this one, that one, the other one, is the only thing I can understand. And he was sometimes exhibiting and sometimes exhibiting, and he was carrying all ecstasies in relationship with Krishna in that same personality in his relationship with Caitanya Mahaprabhu. And not to make it a little more confusing, but as Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes, that when Ramananda Roy met with Caitanya Mahaprabhu, it was like Lalita meeting with Krishna. Vishaka meeting with Krishna. So Ramananda Roy is an otherworldly personality for sure. Through the mouth of Ramananda Roy, Lord Chaitanya spoke truths that Ramananda Roy had never heard before, never understood before, but Lord Chaitanya was engaging with him and engaging him as an instrument to speak very, very, very elevated truths, revealing the truths that he came to give, the truths of the very, very special love of the resident of Vrindavan, the special love of the gopis amongst the residents of Vrindavan, the special love of Radharani amongst the residents, amongst the gopis, and the different stages of love of Radharani toward Krishna through the mouth of Ramananda Roy, who said, I'm a puppet. You're making me speak things I've never understood before. How intimate! Exclamation point. How intimate was Ramananda Roy with Lord Chaitanya? How qualified was Ramananda Roy to be in such an intimate relationship with Lord Chaitanya? And through him, through Ramananda Roy, he was speaking truths. And through the reciprocal relationship, Ramananda Roy and Swarup Damodar were nourishing this most elevated and esoteric love of Lord Chaitanya. Now, those two, Ramananda Roy and Swarup Damodar, were looked up to by Rupa and Sanatan of course, Rupa and Sanatan had their very special place in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. So we're speaking about, you invited me into your chat room here, so we're speaking about personalities that are very important in understanding Lord Chaitanya and nourishing feelings of transcendental attachment for Krishna as they were experiencing just by hearing about them. And there's something about hearing about them. It stirs something that's within, and kind of like we're busy, so we don't pay attention to those things that are within. But hearing about these personalities stir those things, and remembering them, describing them, hearing glorifications about them, as your SPT group has been doing for the past few weeks, encouraging the whole of ISKCON to hear in different features Lord Chaitanya's teachings, Lord Chaitanya's attachment to the holy name, and so forth and so on. It's by design. It's churning those deeper emotions and attachments that's going to help our whole society come up to a more profound stage of wanting to go run out and give the holy name and give Prabhupada's books and speak through 10 mouths about his followers, and people are wondering what's going on with these people. they become mad.
These descriptions are most wonderful. I really appreciate it. Giving a little feedback here. Maybe we could just end with a few words of encouragement from you to encourage the devotional community to read more of the Caitanya caritāmṛta.
And the doorway for reading more Caitanya caritāmṛta starts with reading the Bhakti Shastri literature and Srimad Bhagavatam abundantly. Now, that doesn't mean don't read Caitanya caritāmṛta. But the doorway to understand it and appreciate it more deeply is through the doorway of the Bhakti Shastri literatures and Srimad Bhagavatam. So I'm maybe not saying what you want me to say, but I'm saying what
what would say as you realize.
My heart. So to understand, just like to understand Bhagavad Gita's message, that you have to be at the feet of a holy person like Prabhupada, and those that are deeply immersed in Prabhupada, and they can convey the message and the mood of Bhagavad Gita through our founder Acharya and other Acharyas. And that will help you understand Srimad Bhagavatam better. And you go through the earlier cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, and then there's a chance that you'll have deeper, more profound appreciation of Krishna's Leela in the 10th canto. And, we've heard Prabhupada say this, but it's true. And by going through deeply into Srimad Bhagavatam, doesn't mean wait till you're a deep Bhagavatam reciter or realizer before you open Caitanya caritāmṛta. But the depth of what Caitanya caritāmṛta has to offer is opened by plunging more deeply into those preliminary literatures. So having said all that, getting a glimpse of something that's so high that's like you need binoculars and you still can't see it. You get a telescope and you still can't see it. You understand, wow, that's really high. I better go back and study Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam more carefully so I can see what's up there. Because not only the pastimes are profound, the way that Krishnadas Kaviraj has compiled the Adi Leela, it's really detailed. It's the postgraduate study. So you may get intimidated by the postgraduate study if you haven't done your undergraduate and graduate studies. So, yes, read Caitanya caritāmṛta more. And I think that will do for you what I just said. I better go back and study Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam more carefully, because this is really high literature. I'm getting something, but I know I'm missing a lot, and I want to get it. So go back and do a refresh on the preliminaries.
Maharaj, our time is ending. I have to say I'm very inspired and enthused. Your message about Rupa Goswami, Jiva Goswami, Sri Damodar, Ramananda Roy, it's just a wonderful portrayal. I think we will find some time in late April to do another thing on the Tattva Sandarbha. We should do that.
Okay. But by the way, it was 60 hours, not 60 units. It was
Yeah,
more than
okay.
60 hours.
60 hours. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we want to thank you so much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
You
Hare
made my
Krishna.
day. Thank you.
Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.